Good morning, afternoon, or evening, my dear language learning master. Well, hope you're doing great today, and welcome you to episode number 13 of the Language Input Podcast, a podcast in which we'll address the most common questions and misconceptions when it comes to the language learning process. All right. Yeah, and as usual, before getting started with today's topic, I just want to remind you that feel free to comment down below on your opinion on this specific topic if you're watching today's on a platform that allows you to do that. Okay. And also, if you have any questions, any ideas that you want me to talk about, feel free to let me know as well, because you'll be helping me a lot. You'll be giving me ideas for future episodes. So thanks in advance for that. And and I'll be more than happy to help you out with your question or doubt or suggestion or whatever. All right. So thank you in advance for that, like I said. And without further ado, let's go with today's episode, number 13. And in today's episode, I'm gonna talk about the fact that can we learn a language without speaking? Or can we learn a language without saying a single word? Okay. And I want to talk about this because, once again, because of the traditional grammar approach, we're so caught up in, the idea of we have to practice, we have to speak the language in order to learn it. You need to practice it, otherwise you'll forget it, and those things. And what I want to say today is that we don't need to say a single word in order to learn a language. All right? We can definitely learn a language without speaking. How about that? So So the answer is definitely yes. So end of the episode. No, just kidding. I'm gonna explain why in a moment. But I just want to be clear on that. Like, I've talked about it many times that we learn a language through comprehensible input. So we learn a language by listening and reading when we understand what we're listening to or reading, of course. If we don't understand it, it's just noise. And again, when I'm talking about understanding what we're listening to or reading, I'm talking about the overall message. I'm not talking about every single word, all right? And so the process works like that. We learn a language by listening and reading, and our ability to speak and write will eventually show up as a consequence. Okay? So to put it into simple words, I think it's crucial to understand that we learn a language by listening and reading when we understand the message, of course. And when we speak, we're not improving. Okay, we're just showing what we already know or what we already acquire through comprehensible input. I hope it makes sense. Okay. So I'm always talking about the same silly example. Like, if you don't believe that, just pick up any new language you're interested in and start talking to yourself in front of the mirror. It may sound silly, but good luck with that. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. All right, but what I'm trying to say here is what I just said. That when we're speaking, we're not improving. We're not what we always call practice is not helping us improve directly. All right, we're just showing what we already acquired through comprehensible input. So I think that's really, really important to understand. Of course, most times when we're speaking, most times, if not 100% of the times when we're speaking to someone, we're getting a response, right? So indirectly, we are indeed improving because when we're speaking, we're getting a response, and in that moment, we're listening to the language. So we keep improving, right? And I think this thing is key to understand as well, and that's why, because we've heard many times that XYZ friend or colleague or relative went to England to learn English, or to France to learn French, or to Spain to learn Spanish, or whatever it is. And people are always talking about, yeah, that person learned the language because, you know, they lived in the country where the language is spoken, right? And they got so much practice. They were speaking the language all day long. And again, that's actually not the reason why they learn the language. They learn the language because they had access to input in the target language all day long. All right. The thing is, in most conversations, when you're speaking, you're getting a response, so you're getting comprehensible input. I mean, I'm assuming you understand the message. All right. That's key. We know that. So, you know, that's what I mean. And we can certainly look at the example of kids as usual, that, you know, they listen to the language, to the native language, for a long time until they're ready to start speaking, right? And the fact that they're not speaking doesn't mean that they're not learning the language. Actually, if you pay attention to it, you can see that when they're 10, 11 months old, a year, 14 months, they don't speak a single word yet, but they can understand a lot of what you're saying. I always use the same example, but if you tell a 1-year-old kid, where's the car, they'll go grab the car, or where's the dog, they'll point at the dog, or you know what I mean. So they perfectly understand what you told them, but they just can't speak the language yet. And the same thing works for adults. It's just that we, for whatever reason, we try to force output from day one when we're not ready for it. All right. And also, I also want to talk about the fact that there are so many examples and actually research studies on bilingual and trilingual kids. That, to give you an example, I'm just making this up, but there are a lot of research studies on, let's say, a trilingual kid who grew up in the United States and whose parents were, Mexican and German. All right. So, the kid was exposed to English all day long, and later on in school and with friends and so on. Then let's suppose his or her mother was Mexican. All right. So he or she was listening to Spanish at home all day long as well, and there were some Mexican or Latin communities in his city, so he got to experience real life Spanish as well. Okay. And when it comes to German, his or her father would talk to him or her in German at home, okay, but that kid would not have any chance to immerse in a German community or anything related in the United States, okay. So that kid was listening to English, Spanish, and German throughout its entire few years of his life or her life. All right, but he was only communicating in Spanish and English. Okay, so there are a lot of research studies that show that specific kid, let's say when he or she's 9-10 years old, the entire family travels to Germany to visit his or her family, his grandparents or whatever it is, and all of a sudden, that kid is immersed in a German environment, and that kid starts speaking German perfectly, as what he or she is, a native person, right? And so there's so many examples of that, and I'm sure some of them, but it's just that specific kid was listening to German at home with his or her father, every single day. But apart from that kid wasn't, in a German environment at all until he or she traveled to Germany for the first time. But the fact that kid wasn't speaking the language didn't mean that he had not learned the language, all right? And he or she showed that the first time he or she went to Germany, when started communicating, with friends, with other kids in Germany, with his or her grandparents, with other family members from Germany, etc. All right. And why, so that's to show you that we don't need to speak a single word in order to learn a language, okay? And why is this important, you may be thinking? Well, I think it's important because, again, because of the traditional grammar approach, we're always... I'm not going to go into all the grammar stuff and so on that I've talked about in other episodes, but for whatever reason, we adults think that we need practice, right? We need to talk. So many people still think this way. Even people who are somewhat convinced by the idea that input is the key to the entire process, they still think that they need to speak or they need to talk from day one in order to get better, or in order to improve, right? And that, to me, is the number one source of frustration for a language student. Meaning, wanting to speak when you're just not ready for it, okay? Because the language process just doesn't work like that, Let's say you've been listening to a specific language for 6 months, all right, and you can understand a pretty good share of the language, or a year, and because you can understand this or that much, for whatever reason, we think we should be able to produce, we should be able to speak at a similar rate, right, a similar level. But it just doesn't work like that. The language process doesn't work like that. We see it in kids all the time. They're able to understand way more than they can speak. And I'm sure it happens to you when you're learning a foreign language, that you're able to understand way more than you can speak at all times, actually, right? So because we think we should be able to, for those two reasons. First of all, we think we should be able to produce or to speak at a similar level, a similar rate that we can understand. And two, because we still think, deep down, we still think that practicing or talking actually helps us improve. We're trying to force output. We're trying to speak when we're not ready for it yet. And that causes frustration. And I've seen it in myself, I've seen it in my students, and I keep on, looking at people getting frustrated because of it. And they get frustrated because they're not seeing any results. I've been learning XYZ language for some time, and I can understand a pretty good share of the language, but I just can't speak the language, and they get frustrated. And I'm gonna say they shouldn't get frustrated because it's just the way the language process works. All right, it's not about something being wrong with you or not being talented for languages or whatever you're thinking. No, it's not that. It's just that we need more input in order to start producing, in order to start speaking. It's just the way it works. Okay, so that's why I think this specific topic is really important, and it's really important to understand this concept. Because you're just gonna be able to speak whenever you feel ready for it, and you'll notice, you'll know, okay, you'll know that, you'll see that you'll start to be able to communicate in the target language, little by little, okay. And before wrapping things up, I don't want you to stop speaking or stop talking at all. I'm just saying that we need to understand that, okay? And if you want to go ahead and go to language meetings, or you want to speak in the target language to friends or to unknown people, whoever that is, go ahead and feel free to do it. I'm not telling you to stop talking or to stop trying. Of course not. Because like I said before, whenever you're speaking, you're getting a response, right? The other person is talking back to you. So you're actually going to get comprehensible input in the process. So that's actually going to help you get better and improve, all right? So that's actually a good idea. All I'm saying is, especially when you're getting started with a language, you're just not going to be able to speak. You're just not going to be able to produce the way you'd like to. Because the process just doesn't work like that. It's that simple, all right? And I'm sure many of you can relate to this feeling, of having been learning the language for a few months, being able to understand it to some extent, but just not being able to communicate, or not being able to express yourself the way you'd like to, right? Or just having to think about everything you want to say and other things. And I'm totally convinced by this idea of how languages are actually acquired, and I still need to keep reminding myself, frequently that it's okay, the process is working. If I'm listening and reading the language and I understand what's being said, the process is working. I'm getting better, all right? And even though I can't communicate the way I'd like to yet, it's gonna come. I understand there's like a bit of faith involved in the process, I'd say. But again, it's just the way it works. We see it with kids all the time. It's the same process by which we all acquire our native languages, and it worked. All right. So yeah, again, finally, I don't remember who said this, but there's a quote that I really like that I read sometime in the book. I don't remember where. That said, if you try to fight against reality, you're just gonna lose 100% of the time, right? So there's just the process works for languages, and if you try to fight that, if you try to fight the way the brain works, you're gonna get frustrated. So yeah, that's why I wanted to talk about this topic today. And yeah, so like I said, feel free to let me know what your opinion on this topic is. If you have any other question, any idea, any topic you want me to talk about, go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. If you can do it in the platform you're listening to this, because I'll be more than happy to help you out, and you'll be helping me out at the same time with ideas for future episodes. So like I said at the beginning, thank you in advance for that, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. And I wish you a good day, my dear language learning master. Bye bye. I'll see you in the next one. Number 14.